Hey everybody, thanks for joining me again. I'm Paul Stone. I'm very grateful and blessed to have anything meaningful or useful to say, so I appreciate any of y'all that are tuning in, all of you that are back. Today we want to talk about something that is in the news a great deal, but again, we'll look at the news story as a symptom. This one has some unique characteristics to it because it really does affect the viability of how we propel ourselves throughout our day, throughout our lives. So a lot of folks, my young crowd that's watching has been using AI a great deal. My older crowd still wonders what the hell it is. When we look at how a life could be enjoyed, I think one of the greatest things you want to focus on is flow. Things flow. We look at the seasons, there's flow. We look at how rain happens, right? The sun evaporating water off lakes and oceans, rising into clouds, which is just magical. I mean, how does nature get water to float? I mean, you think about a thunderstorm. I just drove through one, and rain is so heavy you can hardly see. How is that like floating? How is all that floating in the air? And I know that you could look it up and science explains it, but it is magical. Like nature can transport billions, trillions of gallons of water floating in the sky. Flow. So and one of my main objectives is to constantly remind you and draw awareness for you that you are part of all of that magic. You are part of things that are hard to explain. If we are the only planet with life like humanity has in the entire universe, that's extraordinary, right? We don't even have anything to compare ourselves to, which is one thing I think we struggle with, right? We want to compare, chicken that was, at one restaurant versus chicken at another. Maybe one's full of antibiotics and all this crazy stuff, and it actually looks better on your plate than the free-range chicken that just kind of ate what it could find. There's different sources. The source of everything matters. So there's things we can compare that we end up seeing as preferences, but it's hard for us to see ourselves because there's no other human race on another planet and how they're living and how they're doing things to compare ourselves to. And there is a principle afoot here, and that is self can't see self. Self can't see self. So we need a mirror. I can't do my hair in the morning without a mirror. Women can't, and anyone who wears makeup these days can't really do that without a mirror. And we are in the habit, worse now than probably ever before, where we smash personal mirrors. People that give us a mirror, we cut someone off in traffic, they lose their mind over that. We're saying, oh, oops, sorry, in our head, please overlook my mistake. And we don't like the mirror they're giving us, so we might even show rage back to them because we assess that their reaction to us is unwarranted or extreme, but they're just being them, and we were just being us. If I made a mistake cutting someone off in traffic today, sorry, apologize. But there's many times where we don't like that criticism. We can't handle that criticism, so we smash that mirror. And I will say that in my viewpoint, in my gut, I know that we really struggle to see suggestions and offerings about self-correction for ourselves, our behavior, our choices, our mistakes. We reject that even harder these days than societies before us, generations before us, and I mean going back thousands of years. Because it isn't safe. It's not a very safe world. And now what we're looking at when we're talking about flow, when we're talking about peace of mind, which is the things we're always talking about. If I was starting a church, it would definitely include Christianity. I grew up Christian. And it would include empathy and understanding for those that only really subscribe to the Old Testament or their other preferred texts and supporting the beliefs that they have. But I'm a Christian. And being such, I happen to benefit from an extraordinary prophet, and the stories that are told about his existence were that difficult principles in life, in a person, kept in place, maintained, applied, would be necessary for generating that life that offered peace. To me, peace is a country. You have to move there. Whether that's decisions made inside of you, movement inside of you, a reorientation inside of you that decides peace is a land that you will live in. Sadly, these days, peace, happiness, those are described as feelings. That sucks. That's a sugar high. That's temporary. The example of the story of Jesus Christ is there were moments where maybe his mind was extremely troubled. Moments like when he said, "Why hast thou forsaken me?" when heading on to the cross. But the majority, if not 99% or 99.9% of the time that he was here on the planet, we saw peace of mind regardless of what was going on around him. And so if we were to say that's an example of something to strive for, and I think billions of us do, even the ones that don't necessarily preside in his church, if you will, can still see movies, examples of self-sacrifice, of adopting and doing his best. Of course, he did a perfect job at it, and we struggle for that, and that's okay. Of applying certain principles, truths, into our lives. Truths. So how, if you just say, well, how would a life without truth, how could that possibly be enjoyed? That's a life, truth is clarity, right? So if I'm living a life in uncertainty, just complete unknowns, I can't be at peace. I'll need resolution of that uncertainty. I need clarity. To me, that kills uncertainty and then offers me the seed ground for peace to come forward. Flow is being in alignment, being aware, and being natural. Clouds don't have to think about rain. The earth doesn't, the ground below doesn't wonder and campaign for more of it. It's designed to accept what it gets. Sometimes it does get too much, sometimes it doesn't get enough, but the planet endures. Life goes on. In the first article today, we're going to talk about artificial intelligence. First of all, it's artificial. So, there's many at the FDA with Kennedy in charge, working very hard to bring truth back to the food system. Many people could say, oh, well, what's he doing? He's changing stuff. He's saying this stuff isn't good. Artificial sweeteners are not good for you. Artificial chemicals, limit that. Chemicals. You don't breathe air off the back of a tailpipe from a vehicle. We smoke, that's a bad habit, but we know that's not good for us. There's no vitamins in cigarette smoke, cigar smoke, vapes. We know that's not a healthcare product. We enjoy it, we do it. But when you're talking about you are what you eat, when we talk about what's going into you all day long, that goes through your entire body, affects your mind, how your mind functions, how your mind works, chemicals are not going to be something that ought to be there. Preservatives. Food has become a product, right? I was on an airplane the other day, and I picked this snack kit. I usually, take care of that stuff before I'm on the plane, so I don't have to eat what they serve. And I ordered this cheese thing, and cheese and crackers came out. I realized this didn't need to be refrigerated. The cheese, for it not to get all moldy and nasty, didn't need to be refrigerated. So I guess that's artificial. You're real, right? This chair I'm sitting on is real. Everything in this room came from the earth, right? Food comes from the earth, but it can be changed and altered in the artificial realm, and that stuff's not good for me. It's not. And this is where a principle can come in. I have to be the guardian of what goes into me. I have to resist the temptation for all the stuff that's marketed to me that looks so fun or looks so great or looks so tasty, or it's going to, supermodels modeling big, fat cheeseburgers that somehow I'm going to date supermodels. Supermodels are going to like me. I'm going to look like a supermodel if I eat that cheeseburger. Like, what is that? I have to be responsible for me. And believe me, I spent the majority of my life not being very responsible or even aware of what I was doing or aware of what the game's all about. So when we look at artificial intelligence, this is literally a technological creation to create an artificial workforce that replaces all of you. And when we look at, why would they let it get that bad? It can. We want to look at how the government is essentially giving permission for the corporate world to replace its citizens' jobs. The government has no vision. I can prove that. I've done that. We know this, right? But we could look at a few examples. Prohibition, telling a country's people it isn't allowed to drink alcohol. Since man first crushed grapes, we've been drinking alcohol, right? That's something we enjoy. So did the government create the country and then we moved here and we have to subscribe to their rules? Or did we create the government? Like, did the risk takers move here first, set up the land, set up the country, set up everything great, and then hired some people to help manage things for us that we're doing our day jobs and we're saying, we'll make this your day job. You volunteered for it. You go there, you do these things we need, that helps us out. But we didn't hire a government to literally make decisions like prohibition for us. We didn't get to vote on that. We didn't get to say, yeah, thanks for proposing that idea. Alcohol is a poison. It is a chemical. It's probably not good for us, but we're going to decline and we're going to keep alcohol legal in the country. So they forced prohibition on us. What did that create? Just created all of us having to drink in shady places. They were called speakeasies. And it created the mob. It literally gave, at a time that the mafia was looking for revenue streams, it just handed them billions of dollars in revenue in getting booze here illegally, making it illegally, and getting it distributed amongst our speakeasies so we could drink it illegally. We did it anyway. It's the same thing with the war on drugs. It doesn't stop anyone from doing drugs. This is where government ineptitude and lack of vision is really effing up your time here on the planet, which in the last episode, we all realized, we all know, we could all admit, none of us asked to be here. Some of us are doing a damn fine job of enjoying the hell out of it, and 70% of us are struggling with that. And we're not struggling with that because we were designed funny. We came out funny. Somehow nature got 70% of us, unable in our creating time in the womb. We were just going to be unable to do well because everything outside your window is doing great. And it needs no government. It's in flow. Everything I'm always going to want to talk about is about you recognizing how your flow is being interrupted by yourself and things outside of you. Recognizing what you can change, what you can't. Clarity kills uncertainty. Depression lives in uncertainty. I'm not giving medical advice and saying someone who's got a chemical imbalance and they're depressed because of that just needs some clarity. This isn't Nancy Reagan saying back in the 80s, just say no. Just say no to those drugs, kids. Just say no. You say no. You say no to the money printing. You say no to an enormous government that is so vast today and has no track record of ever making great decisions for all of us. Let's look at OxyContin. Let's look at the Sackler family. What they were allowed to push past the FDA, who didn't seem to really care about its constituents, who certainly cared about the drug companies because they're funded by drug companies, approving OxyContin. What a tragedy that became. What a travesty that became for even the small town doctors. We've all seen Dope Sick on Netflix. If not, you need to watch that. I think it's only 5 episodes. It's compelling. It's insane. Anyone that is in a government position, whether you're supporting the elected official or the appointed person, you are there to watch out for all of us. our best interests. We hired you to look out for us, to make decisions that affect all the states or a couple of states or all of us together. Not just go running around making choices for us. So now when we look at AI, there was an attempt to get into the big, beautiful bill a 10-year moratorium that no states could pass any regulations on AI for 10 years. Who's asking for that? The AI industry? And what's 10 years? What's 10 years bringing about? What's going to happen inside of 10 years? So I guess it's the old saying, there's no point in closing the barn door. The horse is already out of the barn, right? So if the thing is already out in the wild open and it's entrenched itself, then there's nothing you can do about it now. You don't want to tear it apart, tear it down. There's a lot of things we would like to do. We would like to tear down lots of stuff inside the Beltway. We would like to shrink the living hell out of that government. How is it that they continue to create a track record of absolute injury to all of the people who live here, even if you're doing extraordinarily well? In some way or another, you're in some form of mental anguish over something that happened to someone you love or challenges you had to overcome. Now, that's what's great about the human being is a lot of the stuff, folks, that come against you can be used to make you great. You can look at obstacles as walls that you can't transcend, or you can look at obstacles as rungs on a ladder that you are going to climb for a better view, to get yourself up out of the fray. This is going to be about enlarging your understanding and awareness of the world around you and what you are and what you're a part of. So artificial intelligence is literally the final creation that resolves the agony corporations generally live in. They're always going to live in the agony of how do we make ourselves more profitable? How do we impress shareholders? How do we impress investors? Cutting costs is one of those things that is in their control to do. And of course, with marketing and hopes and dreams, they're always going to hope that they can increase the revenue. But in their direct control, many times, cutting costs is something they can absolutely affect. And so if you think about humans, he failed to set the brake and the dump truck rolled down the hill and hit a school bus. Or they were drunk, or they call in sick, or there's HR problems, right? Or there's just, they're not putting out as much as they can, and the company suffers from an output perspective because maybe someone's going through a divorce. Or maybe their kid's messed up. Or maybe their parent's sick. Or whatever. AI doesn't have any of those problems. It doesn't call in sick. It doesn't forget to set the brake. It isn't going to punch out its boss. It isn't going to shoot the place up. Right? So when we look at the trajectory we're on, we can recognize a truth. AI is literally the capability for the corporate world to replace employees. And here's a couple stats for you. They tout this podium number out. They say unemployment's around 3.5%. If that were true, and we look at the totality of all of the folks in the country that could be working, how is it economic output from our labor force is so low, the government needs to print $2 trillion a year? The old-fashioned way, and there's nothing old about it other than it worked forever, but was altered in the 80s and altered in the 90s and altered recently, and that is the calculating recipe to determine an accurate number of unemployment hasn't been used for 40 years. And the number, if you still applied it today, is saying that unemployment is 27%. 27%. So more than, and in that number, of course, are people that don't have to work. They're just able to, as far as the stats go, their age, their ambulatory. And so, of course, there's some slippage in that number. But let's say it was even 20%. Oh my God, that makes sense. That seems to fit. That's where the economic output isn't there for the government to get enough tax revenue, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, off economic activity of adding 20% more workers into the workforce and everything they buy and everything they create and all the transactions that originate from them, right? So if there were 20% more workers in the country, then maybe the government doesn't have to print so much money. What caused unemployment to get to 27%? Maybe it started with, I don't know, Windows 95. That at least replaced people making filing cabinets like they used to. So some inventions, like the automobile, created probably a lot more jobs than when we rode around on horses. Right? The veterinarians may have struggled and saw a setback. And the gals making horseshoes may have seen a setback. Saddles, barns, people who built barns, they saw a setback. But people who build barns could build something else. And people who build horseshoes out of metal could build something else out of metal. Maybe they switched into generating, the hardware, the shell around a computer, the box. My point is, though, is that some technological advances actually do create jobs and some don't. And automation replaces jobs. Automation means we don't need manual labor anymore. It happens automatically. There's a robot that puts the windshield in a car on an assembly line that humans used to do. Automation. So the internet and computing power, they're doing thinking that we aren't so good at or can't do so well or can't do so quickly. AI is literally the human in a computer motherboard, whether it's a robot or it's just in a computer. You know, my wife was asking me the other day, she's like, well, will they replace checkout people? I'm like, of course. I'm like, well, how, like a robot? I'm like, I don't know, probably just have a screen there that you could talk to some face. And they're just doing everything, and they're calculating, you're scanning, they're scanning, whatever it works. But there's fast food restaurants that don't have anyone working there, bank tellers, et cetera, et cetera. So when you look at true unemployment right now is already 27%, AI will probably replace anything that is a routine-oriented job over the next few years, because guess what? The pocketbook that is behind pushing and promoting and developing AI is showing up. There isn't a matching, offsetting pocketbook from the corporate world that is there that is spending that kind of money to protect the analog workforce. I'm analog, spiritual, but analog. I don't feel good being treated as if I live inside of a motherboard. So my first article today is talking about how MAGA and the tech world are now at odds. They, of course, we want to use tech to help a presidential election go successfully. We want to use tech to write the best term paper. And later we'll be talking about the job world and writing resumes and all that stuff. But just like they eventually took handwriting mandatory out of school a few years back, now, if we had to actually write something, our handwriting's very sloppy. So just an extreme off that example would be, we don't even have to think anymore. We might have a question or a request. Write me a resume. Write me a business plan. Write this email. Write this text. We can think because there's a need in front of us to fill a void where something needs to be delivered or created by us or messaged by us. But if we aren't the one writing the message, then our brains will atrophy. Our creative juices is what is so magical. One of the most magical things about humanity is our Johnny-on-the-spot ability to just come up with something brilliant. Well, now we'll be relying on AI to do that, and that muscle that we've worked for thousands of years will just start to go offline. There's a movie, WALL-E, right? WALL-E, it's this great robot, cute, he lives down on the planet. Planet's been destroyed. Most of society that could afford it is living in these spaceships floating above the Earth, and they're just like sitting around floating lounge chairs, drinking beverages and watching programs. Is that what you want? Now, I'm not saying we can stop it. That isn't ever really going to be the point of what I'm talking about. There's thousands of people out there that always are screaming and yelling. You might join with them about how angry you are that this thing's happening. That doesn't cause you flow. That doesn't cause you alignment. That means you're spending your day putting all kinds of poisonous anger inside your head, and you're completely unaware to the moment you have that life's occurring where your feet are. And what are you going to do about it so you actually move to that land of peace and enjoy your time here? The mission is to enjoy your time here. That is the mission. And the stuff life throws at you is never going to stop coming. And it's always just saying, and it's saying it in very loud ways today, what are you made of? How are you going to enjoy your time here? Or are you going to continue to just be slave to the prescriptions put upon you and the expectations put upon you by others, telling you who you are, telling you what you can and can't be, telling you what you can and can't do, telling you what you can and can't believe, telling you how you must represent yourself versus how you want to represent yourself? Again, you're taking all of this illumination I'm attempting to make from a failure. I have come to learn that this might actually be some of the mystery code to enjoying our time here, because I've spent so many decades not. I don't know that you would necessarily learn this or hear of these things from someone who just knows nothing but wild success in their life. I don't know that they would know this. I would only know this because of the suffering I've gone through and still go through. And even today, there is more uncertainty in things I can't control today in my life than ever before. In all the major areas. Marriage is solid. Love of my life. But I'm lost too. But what I know is the compass that helps us find north, the direction through the darkness, are principles, truths. And it does take guts, more guts, tons of guts, to honor them when you compare how easy it is to ignore them. To just go ahead and binge on some junk food, not work out, not go on a walk, not smell a flower, because someone's looking. I walked past this tree the other night, walking my dog, and I'm like, where's that smell coming from? There's this huge tree with all these flowers on it. I wanted to smell the flower. A voice crept into my head. What if someone's watching? What if someone thinks you're weird? What if you're weird? What if I am weird? It's there. There's always going to be doubt running through my head. We live in a conundrum. I have a soul I believe is shared of God's soul. Yours too. We share one. That connects us. The soul fears nothing and knows everything. Carried around by a human machine that fears everything and knows nothing. And in that doubt, it's constantly seeking to see around a corner. Give me a crystal ball. What decision do I make? Do I go left or right? Do I stay put or move forward? Do I people please or not? Do I honor myself? Do I let them take care of their feelings? I'm certainly not going to go out in an aggressive way to cause anyone bad feelings or hurt feelings or be upset or lose or not have something. But if I'm looking at me, someone else is upset, what do I owe them? Should I people please? Is that what society's been teaching us to become? That's how you end up with a leash around your neck, and you're not the one holding it. And I've lived that, so I understand. So in this first article, I'm going to read a couple of the clips from that for you. The tech right and the MAGA populists had united briefly to get an anti-woke Trump into the White House. As their coalition fractured, Vice President J.D. Vance, a Peter Thiel protege, who's attended NatCon, this is happening at NatCon, multiple times, linked to the articles in the bottom of the show, tried to serve as a bridge between them. But this year's NatCon has made it clear that the factions are no longer on the same page. Nearly half the conference's panels were explicitly focused on tech atrophying the brains of their children in school and destroying critical thought in universities. Tech weakening the American economy. We're replacing workers, right? So the government prints money. So that's, if you're wondering, well, how does tech, doesn't it improve the economy? The economy is actually about people. So I'm interrupting, this isn't in the article. It's actually about people, not machines. People can make machines, but we don't need machines replacing us, making us. That destroys the economy, because robots, computers, they don't have to eat anything but electricity. We have to eat. There's an entire system that has to exist for us to exist. We make it exist, and then we benefit from what we made. And without that, then we don't exist. Tech weakening the American economy, tech weakening the national defense and international dominance, tech assaulting the Judeo-Christian faith and destroying humanity. Their hostility varied wildly. Some acknowledged that AI was not going away and could have some societal benefit if harnessed correctly. Probably need the government's help and all that, but they wanted to put a moratorium. The Senate rejected it. But there were people asking, and it did get into the law as an idea or as a request, that there be a 10-year moratorium on against any regulation stymieing AI development or what it can become or how entrenched it ends up in our lives. That's very worrisome. So if you're a betting man or woman or in between, that word "if" harnessed correctly, while others claimed further AI development would lead to civilizational suicide. When you want to bet with your life, are you going to bet on if? Are you going to trust the government to protect you? Where is the examples of them doing that? Yes, I know they come to the podium and talk about wanting to. They have some ideas they hope do protect, or at least ensure we're left alone, protected that way. Safety rarely offers you such a thing. You end up locked down, painted in a corner, can't take an action. Tree could get hit by lightning. It grows anyway. Fish swimming in the sea could be someone's meal. It swims anyway. I live where there's sea turtles being born. A lot of those, they're so cute when they're clamber into the ocean. I don't know how. How do they know which way to go? How do they know where the water is? They know. It's amazing. It's amazing. You are literally part of the most amazing story ever told in the universe. There might be other planets that have humans like we do. We don't know. So just count on yourself being just literally the most magical story the universe ever told. The human being. So civilizational suicide. But nearly all the speakers expressed a deeply emotional, entrenched suspicion against the tech industry. Now, a symptom. We're not going to say that tech people spending their time at keyboards and cubicles are bad people. Not saying that at all. They're actually creating something, and that is normal for humans to be doing creating stuff. Look how much we've created since we discovered the wheel and fire. Making homes out of timber, ships, sail, wind power. Look how much we've created. That's magical. That's part of the human thing. Where we might be hoping for a centralized force to kind of look out on the national landscape and make some choices, go, whoa, whoa. We're not going to develop technology that replaces our workers here because they pay taxes. Can't they even see that? How much tax does AI pay? None. Because what's their salary? None. Healthcare benefits, they don't need any. They don't need any. You do. You need all that, and all that stuff causes workers to fill a job. So the government's not doing that. They're not putting any limits on it. They're not restricting anything. They're going to spend trillions and trillions and trillions of dollars building data centers, marrying up quantum computing and these incredible chips that are being made today to support AI. They're literally, corporate world is literally making every move it can to replace you as a worker. Do we get mad at corporations? No, because that's what they're supposed to do. Cut costs, maximize profit. So it isn't personal, but there is a failing, and I've already pointed it out, and I'll point it out hundreds of times. Until I go to the grave, however many shows I do, I will be pointing out government ineptitude is at the origin source of misery caused to you. That they do not do what we want them, need them to do. The function of them is to make choices that always honor its citizens. Letting the jobs go overseas, we talked about last episode. They failed us there. Money printing, creating this false financial energy that causes the cost to go up beyond our payrolls. Evil. All ineptitude. Einstein said the mind that creates the problem cannot possess the solution. He's speaking about lack of vision. You can see that walking across the street without looking is not a good idea. Why? Because you don't want to suffer an injury. Where is the government in preventing us from suffering injury? They're actually causing them. The people of the government aren't bad. They're creating. They're being told to create. They're thinking. They just don't understand that they're the ones pushing the buttons and the levers causing us the trouble. So if the government were able to shrink to 1/10 of what it is today, we would have the power back to enjoy and make decisions that we enjoy our lives with. When they're an oppressive force that snuffs out that. I want to draw attention to you needing to make choices for yourself. And a lot of times that might end up starting with, where do you live? Where do you live? Because in the next article, we want to talk about our analog, brothers and sisters I'm not digital. I have electricity running through me. We all do about 6 volts, but I am analog. And I need to eat and I need to create, which creates an income, right? An energy that I then expend back into the economy, into the world, and I acquire things I need to survive, exist, flourish, and working is how we snag some of that financial energy swimming through our economy. And right now, millions of would-be workers find themselves in a similar position. Corporate profits are strong. The jobless rate is 4.3%, and wages are climbing in turn. But payrolls have essentially been frozen for the past 4 months. The hiring rate has declined to its lowest point. When did AI start becoming mainstream? Last year. Right? Let's not lose track of that. Last year, we really started, 2024, we started hearing all about AI. First time we really heard about crypto was 2017. Bitcoin went from 1,000 to 20,000. So in 2016, no one really knew what Bitcoin was or cryptocurrency. In 2017, we did. When did we know about COVID? We didn't really know about it in 2019. I truly believe the Chinese developed that and released it on purpose. We heard about it in 2019, end of 2019, beginning of 2020. We have to pay attention to these timelines because, again, we need clarity. So that's just a way to bring some clarity into an uncertain situation. So last year we hear about AI, and now there's this great report talking about in the last 4 months, the hiring rate has declined to its lowest point since the jobless recovery following the Great Recession. So that would have been 2008 and 9, the Great Recession. 4 years ago, employers were adding about 4 to 5 workers for every 100 they had on the books. Month in, month out. Now that number is cratering. It talks about a few individual cases. One of them, he applied to 200 jobs. He was rejected 200 times. Actually, he clarified he didn't get rejected 200 times. A lot of businesses just never responded. I know people that are living in this hell. They're using AI to write the resumes. Companies are using AI to screen them. There's no more, it's degraded how much human interaction there is. A human writing a resume, a human reviewing it. That's gone. You're asking a computer, an artificial thing, to write something about a real thing, and a real job position opening is being screened by an artificial thing. What if someday the AI just doesn't want to hire anyone? And it just turns down all the resumes. There's nothing here. Really? The human being that's kind of supposedly sitting over the AI, nothing good? Fill this role? AI can do it. And over the next few years, you're going to see that. So this isn't about, oh my God, what are we going to do? I'm not going to get a job. There are jobs AI can't do, at least for now. And I know, and when I was in the military, my drill instructor used to say, suck it up. Suck it up. This is happening. You end up living like sheep. You're just following the butt in front of you. The view never changes. There's 100 of these quotes that we all know that we can read, that we can look at for inspiration, but we have to act on it. And so before you get locked down and you're out of options, before you're literally forced maybe over the next few years, because tech advances so fast, a lot faster than the government realizes, a lot faster than we realize, that someday we're just in a situation where we live off the government dole. We just live off their handouts. And they just print more and more and more money. And the cost of everything goes higher than they can print, so they print even faster and the costs go higher, but you aren't enjoying your time here. Because autonomy is also a main ingredient to enjoying our time on the earth. We have to be able to feel like we're our own Christopher Columbus. And please, let's not get into whatever happened here in America. It's tragedy. There aren't words for what happened to the African Americans, the blacks that came here. There aren't words that can describe what had the injustices to them and to the Native Americans when we rolled from shore to shore. And I want to get into that on certain episodes. Absolutely. I am not sidestepping that. But for right now, we're talking about someone he was told the world is flat. Now, maybe it wasn't that crystal clear. Maybe he just wanted to get away from his crazy family. He was like, I just want to get away from them as far as I can. I just want to convince the kings, give me some money, give me 3 boats, I'm going west. And he just wanted to get away from his nutty family. Or he just wanted to get away from whatever. Who knows? Maybe he's just full of ego. And all he wanted to do was see who could sail the farthest. Maybe he had a death wish. And he thought he would sail right off the edge of the earth and die. And then he wouldn't be here anymore. But he would actually be glorified instead of just someone who's eating a bullet. Christopher Columbus lives in all of us. Autonomy. Not accepting what we're told, prescribed upon us, not getting a gun or a knife out, not hurting anyone. Just saying, you know what? I'm going to go blaze my own trail. I'm going to leave the city and live in the country. I'm going to get a job where I know I'm in control of my bills. My earnings are better, like the state of Tennessee, Arkansas. There's a few. And I promise I'm going to get into a research mode and give you an episode on these options. I'm not saying this is easy. I'm saying my drill instructor used to say, suck it up. The choice is always going to be every day, most seconds of the day, all throughout your life, all throughout my life, the painful lessons I've learned is I either get to just drift, I get to acquiesce, or I get to have propulsion. I get to be self-supporting through my own contributions. I get to recognize that what was in Christopher Columbus and what was in Harriet Tubman and what was in Martin Luther King and what was in Charlie Kirk is in me. We are all made of the same stuff. So these things that we're talking about, AI and the youth not being able to find a job, unemployment, just struggle, your earnings not overcoming your bills, that's essential because if you can't be at peace, if you can't resolve to just breathe without all these pressures, if you can't get these pressures and stresses off of you, then you can't be at peace. So the mind says, we got to get the stresses off of us first, and then we can be at peace. Wrong. We can be at peace like the greatest example of living I have ever run across in Jesus Christ. We can be at peace regardless of what's going on around us. But at the same time, we also will probably need to make some tough choices or choices that are just inconvenient. And we have, as I look out at society, and even myself, have become lazy. Lazier. Look, 100 years ago, 80% of our economy came from farming. How many people were actually baling hay, getting up at the crack of dawn, dealing with the eggs manually, milking the cows manually, fixing fences manually, doing all that stuff without four-wheelers? You want to go travel around the farm, you hopped on a horse. 100 years ago, 80% of our GDP came from farming. We were doers and beings. Today, we're just so much something else. It is incumbent upon you, me, all of us, individually and as a group, to recognize the greatness. Close your mind. Whoever just comes to mind. Maybe an uncle. Maybe it was Michael Jordan. Maybe it was some political person. Maybe it was an athlete. Maybe it was a general. Whoever that was that might come to your mind that you think is just the greatest person ever. You're made of the same stuff as they are. The same iron that flowed through their blood, that's at the center, the core of this earth, flows through yours. Life does create certain situations where heroes are just born. Courage is not something that is internal to us. Courage is always going to be outside of the human machine that knows nothing, is afraid of everything. Because if courage resided within our human machine, then we wouldn't doubt or fear things like we do today. We have to reach for it. That's what life on this planet, and there probably is life on others, and on this planet, you have to reach for solutions. You have to sacrifice convenience for peace of mind. You have to recognize that even though there's 8 billion of us on the planet, that's 8 billion Harriet Tubmans, Christopher Columbuses, Martin Luther King, Charlie Kirks. Those who resonated with Charlie Kirk were recognizing something inside of him that was also inside of you. The beauty, though, of the hero is that they're just kind of doing what we'd like to do or don't know how to do. They're doing it. So they're an example of what's inside of us, and we subscribe to that. It empowers us. It attracts us to that. But just recognize that it isn't a roulette wheel. It isn't a whack-a-mole on who ends up getting the right stuff. We all got the right stuff. All of us did. So when you're thinking about how am I going to enjoy my time here, whether you're 20 or 80, whether you're 80 and empathizing for your 20-year-old grandkids and what that life looks so bleak for them compared to when you were making your own toys for Christmas like my dad did, and that you were grounded and in touch with the world around you and you made things with your own hands and your own mind, the keyboard counts, the mind still counts. But being connected, grounded to this planet, you are earthlings. Earthlings. Magical stuff. Deer can't build a cabin. Beavers can kind of build a cabin, but you're not a beaver, right? They don't even have thumbs. We have thumbs. When we talk about conflict, we talk about the Democrats and the Republicans. We could talk about the blue and the gray. That's why I wore the jacket. A lot more gray than blue. But it's what I had in my closet. Blue and the gray. Civil War. Fought over an ideal. Fought over economics. Fought over whatever. We can argue about what that was all about. But what we can't argue about is there was a conflict between two parties. Two. And so much of humanity is always that way. Cowboys and Indians, cops and robbers, right? The Soviets and the Americans. The evil versus the good. Our minds trick us into seeing things in these little boxes. Think spherically. You think linearly? A dinner table is linear. It is not a car. It is one thing. You are many things. You are hundreds of things. You can be a kid and a parent at the same time. So when we look at the blue and the gray and the struggle, this country's going through that again. It's going through that and always will be. Because generally the people that are involved in mass are looking at two boxes that things can go into, like, don't like. The mind is like a filing cabinet. Read Red Hawk. Read about something that helps you see and think spherically. It is hard to resolve everything into one thing. Good or bad, like, don't like, hot, cold, tasty, not tasty. Look at how we just file stuff all day long in our minds, and then we end up with stuff like this coming at us. AI is going to replace all the jobs. AI is going to perhaps be the slave master. We thought we were in charge of the planet, or the most, powerful force on it, other than the planet itself, please. How many times I walk down the beach, I see litter. There's an island floating in the middle of the Pacific the size of Texas that is nothing but plastic debris. God knows where the hell did all that come from? People just throwing it off the side of a boat? Stuff that's washing out through storm drains all around the planet? Look at how neglectful we are. We have to wake up and take responsibility for the Christopher Columbus that lives within us, that wants to chart a course through life against the flat earth statements that everyone was telling us is true. Scientists proved flight wasn't possible. The Wright brothers proved it was. The spiritual part of life is, you can say it doesn't need to be there, or it isn't, or you get to choose if it is or it isn't, but it's there. We have to be in alignment. We need to work at looking at where we're going to live and what we're going to do and how we're going to be responsible for ourselves. Because that's the only way that you enjoy your time on the planet. And it will always come up against resistance. And lastly, I want to end with this. Some struggles show you that you are in alignment with the world around you, but perhaps in disagreement with the majority of people that would express their opinions about what you are, who you are, what you're doing, what you're thinking. And then there's struggles that show you are not in alignment with the world around you. Bring some of that wonderment into your mind and look, because your life's full of struggles, just like mine. What are they saying to you? You'll know if you're actually struggling uphill for a better view, and the world around you wants to just resist that somehow you think you're different or better or whatever they're doing to you. It's trying to suppress that spirit inside of you, the Harriet Tubman inside of you, the Martin Luther King inside of you, the Michael Jordan flying from the top of the key with his tongue out inside of you. That resistance is actually confirming for you that you're on the right path. And the struggles of ending up where you feel like you're living in a box, you've been put in a corner, that's the struggle that is showing you you are not in alignment. Because inside of you, the magical force that's inside of you does seek to flow like rain. The seasons flow. The planet flows around the sun. All of this stuff in the Milky Way flows around a black hole, that gravitational pull. And I've said it before, and I want to say it now, that the overwhelming force in all things, is a pulling force. It is pulling. It is attraction. It is unbreakable. The pushing force, when you see it once in a while, you might say, well, a hurricane is a pushing force. Yeah, when you just look at it like that, it is pushing all kinds of crap around the surface of the planet. Trailer parks and cars and roofs. But it's actually coming from a lowering of atmospheric pressure, which is pulling those environmental forces together that creates a hurricane. It's pulling. But all the forces around you and everything you can look at and all the atoms and everything, whether it's this camera, the stand, table in front of me, fabric in this chair, the atoms in my body are all pulling. So are you leading a life that is attractive to yourself? Are you attracted to you? Are you attracted to the decisions you've been making? The beliefs that you maybe only subscribe to because a whole bunch of people around you subscribe to them. You just want to fit in. The Christopher Columbus that found this country, the greatest country, and yes, oh my God, so many injustices for this country to be here, a beacon of faith and gratitude and giving back to the planet around it in many ways, but yes, we're all human, so I know you can tear my argument apart there in 100 different ways. But the source of everything matters. Your intention matters. What you do with your life matters. Who you are and who you can become matters. It matters to me. I want to hear the reports about how people are turning their lives around because they're waking up that they are in charge of how it goes. And the stuff that we're showing so much anger and resentment against isn't going to change because of your resentment and your anger. But you will. You will be living a life of resentment and anger. These forces that come against you keep coming in different ways. The source of everything matters. The source of your thoughts, the food you put in your body, what you're doing with your time matters. God bless. God bless everyone who's mourning the loss of Charlie Kirk. God bless our youth that don't see much vision for how their life's going to go. Maybe never before in our time has there been so much pressure on our youth to actually break with tradition. That's what an individual revolution would be about. A revolution is breaking with tradition, breaking with how it's always gone. If you aren't happy, you can be. You'll have to move there. Whether it's some decisions inside of you that need to move, or you literally need to move where you live, that you need to be able to access an ecosystem, a financial ecosystem that is more based off the earth beneath your feet than in the cities. That maybe it's time to leave the cubicles and banging away on a keyboard all day for a paycheck that's never going to outweigh your bills. Because there'll still be that struggle out in the towns, out in states like Tennessee. But you know what else will be there? Connection, fulfillment, and you being proud of yourself for taking the actions. We don't necessarily know how it has to turn out. But I can tell you what goes into bread decides whether you like it when it comes out of the oven or not. So how are you making dough? What dough? What are you putting into this dough, this bread of life that you want to eat? Would you, what you're making, would that serve up at a restaurant and cause a line out the door? But you have what's in you to do that. Just like all of your heroes, all made of the same stuff.